Welcome to the My House Podcast, a show about the past, present, and future goings-on at the My House Youth Drop-In Center in Wasilla, Alaska, with your host, Michelle Overstreet.
Hi, welcome to episode 31 of the My House Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Overstreet, and today I'm joined by our outreach coordinator, Jay Dagenhart. Thank you for being here, Jay.
Thanks for inviting me.
Before we get into our discussion, Isaac, do you have any housekeeping for us?
Yeah, this Saturday there is the recovery barbecue from 12 to 4 over at Nunley Park right next to the drop-in center here. So if you are interested in hanging out, meeting some service providers, getting some burgers, I think a couple of us are going to be there as well throughout the day, so that should be fun. Another soft promo for the golf tournament, just because that's the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is the golf tournament. And just another, I'm excited that hopefully soon we're going to have some merch for the podcast network and for some of the podcasts. That is we're through 3 rough drafts, and we're finally to the finished products that are going to roll out in that first wave. And it's not just for the podcast network. There's some stuff for the cafe. There's some stuff for the organization as well that I'm super happy with how it turned out. Julie and we put our noses to the grindstone and churned out some stuff that I think looks pretty cool. So be on the lookout for that as well here in the next couple of months. Oh, the cafe has kombucha now also. The cafe is about to go through a remodel. We haven't even really talked about that, but June 1st, they're going to be tearing up the cafe, but we're still going to have cold sandwiches that are going to be prepped before and served. We're going to have cold brew, and we're going to have kombucha. And if you want to try the kombucha before the remodel happens, it's really good. It makes my tummy happy too. And it tastes good. It's like blueberry mint. It's delicious. Jay doesn't even know what kombucha is.
I don't even know how to spell it.
He's a simple man whose back hurts.
Is that with a K or a C?
Kombucha is a young person thing, but if you're a cool young person like me, come drink some kombucha because it's delicious. If you're someone that swings by the cafe regularly, don't be afraid. We have the mobile coffee cart that is all set up, ready to go. We're still going to have limited, but still food and drinks while that cafe remodel is going on. So don't be afraid to swing on by.
Awesome. I'm excited about that because I think the kombucha with the health benefits is a really nice educational piece for a lot of our clients who have not always focused on nutrition or known a lot about feeding their bodies and staying healthy. And we've been sort of turning the ship a little bit to try to include some of that in our supper clubs and some of the events that we've had. And so the kombucha fits nicely in there.
I'm going to go get some right after we're done recording.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited about the cold foam on top of the cold brew. I quit drinking coffee in December, but I have to make exceptions once in a while. And the cold brew with the cold foam.
I'm waiting on the root beer. That's what
the root beer.
I'm just here for the root beer.
Okay, good. That's on. I know that's on deck. We were looking for a local provider for that, so that's exciting.
So if you're a local provider that has root beer and is also listening to this podcast,
just come and see Jay.
Come by.
Come and see Jay. Call Jay for some outreach. Right. So Jay, tell us a little, what is outreach? When we talk about outreach, sometimes when I'm in a group, people don't know what I'm talking about. What is it?
Yeah, really, for me and for what we do here at my house, it's pretty much everything we do outside the building.
Okay.
It's going to meetings. It is communicating with partner agencies, working with law enforcement. It's bigger than just looking for homeless kids. That is a part of it, of what we do. But a lot of it is building partnerships in the community. We're seeing probably as much now as any time since we started my house, kids that are coming in because someone in the community has referred them. They've heard about us somewhere outside of the building, whether it be schools. I work a lot with school nurses, with school counselors, leaders in the school, because they have a lot of one-on-one with these kids, and they know them better than anybody, probably better than their parents at this point with what they're going through. So we work a lot with them, and they're doing referrals, and we're actually going into the schools more this year, probably than ever, of doing intakes in the school.
Nice.
And meeting kids. It's nice because it's on their terms. It's on their turf at the school. It can be intimidating to come into a new building where you don't know anything, you don't know anybody. It's a lot safer for these kids that are struggling to be able to sit down with a guidance counselor and with one of our case managers. So A lot of what we do is schools in this during the school year and things like that. In the off times when school's not in, it's a lot more trying to find out if there are kids that are camping in the area or in bad situations or couch surfing, things like that, and really getting them hooked up with our services that we can provide. So pretty much anything outside the building, we deem as outreach with our outreach team.
Nice. And so I'm going to give Jay a little shout out because Jay was not only on one of our first boards of directors, he came right behind the founders and was on the board of directors. He was the first paid employee for my house and was the outreach coordinator, and then moved back to Virginia. And then we had an outreach coordinator for just a little over a year and an interim, maybe 2 years. And that person gave us notice, and I called Jay in Virginia and said, "Are you ever thinking about moving back here? Because we'd sure like to have you back." And so it's been awesome. And thank you for mentioning those school intakes, Jay. We worked really hard. You know, our staff is all federal background checked, so we're able to go into the schools. But the beauty of having those intakes done in the schools is it amplifies that message to stay in school and that there's value there with that education. And that's an important piece for young people looking for exit strategies from homeless and staying on a path of productivity. And then the other thing I was reminded of when you talked about that is the hospital intakes. And we really built a relationship with the hospital, not just the emergency room when kids come into the emergency room and are homeless, but also the behavioral health unit there.
Yeah, we really, all of our staff are trained in that. And it's a great relationship because we're seeing more and more kids here in Alaska that are coming from very rural villages that come in for mental health needs into the hospital. And historically, there's really been nowhere for them to go as they're getting ready to exit the hospital. So us having that relationship with mental health side of the hospital there is they can call us, and they do quite often, and we go to the hospital. We sit down with these kids and we do an intake and figure out kind of a roadmap of how we can help them. And then they're not like walking out of the hospital with nothing.
Right.
They come straight into our housing. We can employ them. We can get them mental health needs, behavioral health, substance abuse, all these things. Housing. And it's really, really cohesive with the hospital.
This right here, what you're describing is how we prevent long-term homelessness in our community. It's a magic. This is the secret sauce, because when you can take somebody from a behavioral health, residential behavioral health or inpatient behavioral health situation and bring them into a program where we wrap around services and get them up and running. And we're not, thank you for mentioning the rural Alaska connection, because we're not bringing kids that are from rural Alaska into our program to keep them here. We're bringing them here to empower them to go back and be productive and healthy in their own community.
Yeah, I mean, we see kids from Nome, we see kids everywhere, and the goal is to have them, like you say, get healthy and then go home to where they have the support that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means they have 6 months to a year of sobriety, or maybe they want to get a peer support certificate and go back there and help other people. Or maybe they're looking at plugging into a 12-step network in their community that they weren't aware of when they came this direction. And so that piece is really important. In order to prevent long-term homelessness, we have to meet them where they are.
Right. Yeah, the goal is to end the generational homelessness, generational addiction, all these things, and break the cycle in their life.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of outreach, this is always kind of a fun thing to talk about, because Jay actually travels. He covers a geographic area the size of the state of West Virginia, and we've picked up kids at the Trapper Creek Post Office, at the Sutton General Store. I remember one time the person who was running the little store up in Sutton called and said, "We got a couple of kids. I think they're living in their car in our parking lot." And you went up to visit with them, and all they needed was some gas.
Right.
You brought a 5-gallon can of gas, and they followed you back here. And so I giggle a little bit at that, because I always think that sometimes the solution is so simple.
Right.
And those two young people, one of them I know is doing very well. I've seen her out and about, and just providing that connection to support and resources and getting them up and into a place where they can come and say, "Hey, I need a little bit of gas." we have a solution.
Right. It's been real neat too to work in the community. We live in a great community here, and people, they see a need, and now that we started this 2011,
2009,
yeah. So since then, it's nice that they know who to call. They know if they call us, we're going to come out. We're going to find out what's going on. We get tips all the time. Hey, there's somebody camping out here. Can you go check on them or whatever? I got one yesterday from Isaac. Actually.
Nice.
It's nice to live in our community where everybody knows what we're doing.
Yeah. And they don't see it as threatening.
Right. And it's actually kudos to, I think, everybody that's doing a part in this. It's harder and harder for me to find kids that are on the streets. So that's
great.
Good. I'm grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. It's so great, and we don't see the camps here in the Valley the way that you do in some other places.
Right.
We were just in San Francisco for a conference, an outreach conference, in fact, for the whole western region of the United States. I think
Region 10.
Yeah,
Region 9 and 10. Yeah.
Yeah, and very interesting. There was a lot of talk about the challenges in the more urban areas. Coming through San Francisco, we saw a lot of different, it wasn't overt really, but there was a lot of evidence of homelessness.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you go downtown.
Mm-hmm.
We were on Ubers and trains and all kinds of things. And it was pretty evident that their problem is a little different than what we have here. Obviously, outreach looks different for them. And it was neat to sit down with, there was probably, 250 people there at this conference. And it was nice to meet. We had a special kind of a breakout group that were just outreach teams that were there. So it was nice to kind of sit down with them and see what they're seeing, and we're all seeing a little bit different things. Homelessness looks a little different here in rural Alaska as it does in downtown San Francisco. But the problem is still the same, and we believe the solution is still the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's meeting people where they are, and it's wraparound services. It's not just throwing housing at it. That's a one-legged stool that doesn't stand on its own. Yeah. And it's drug treatment, it's mental health, it's housing, it's job training, it's all of these things that encompass, and we know it works. We know the model works.
Yeah. High school completion. I think Thursday we've got 5 kids graduating high school, doing a little party for them here, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal for kids that choose that. I think the last time I checked with Jim, the numbers were that 67% of kids coming in the door didn't have a high school completion, and 1 year later that number drops to 37%. They get their high school completion done coming in, and it's such a game changer for income, whether you're rural or urban. Having that opportunity to say, I've got a high school diploma or I've got a high school completion, really makes them much more employable.
Right. It's a banner,
it's a banner
to put up, and that you're employable.
Yeah. Celebrate that. There were a couple of interesting conversations in San Francisco around exit strategies, and a lot of programs that are just focused on a niche, a particular niche, get frustrated that they don't have exit strategies, or they can't see the exits for the clients, and it becomes kind of a revolving door.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think our strategy all along has been very, very precise and very focused, that we want to see these kids well-rounded in every area and every facet of their life, and they're going to become stronger, independent, and they're going to do well in life.
Yeah, it was nice. There were several different groups that I sat in with that really wanted to know more about what we were doing and how we were doing it.
Right.
And that was fun. That's a fun.
We even got a plug from our field officer, that he and our I guess Kimberly.
His boss.
His
right?
boss.
Yeah.
They came here and toured last fall and did a podcast with us and everything. And so he put a plug in for us for our program, so that was kind of neat in front of everybody.
This is outreach. Yeah. I mean, the podcast network really is outreach, and provides the community with information that you really couldn't get any other way. And it's clever and creative. And I think I've talked to one guy who said, I'm going back and I'm doing that. I'm doing a podcast. He goes, that is a great idea. And there were several people who said, wow, I never thought about something like that. That's a regularly occurring thing. we have stuff that we want to talk to with the community, and we write articles, and, everybody has their things that they do, but this is a little bit of a unique way of doing that. And there were several people at that conference that got very excited about that. They wanted me to send Isaac next time so they could get more info about that. But I think that what this does for us is it really speaks to some of the challenges of reaching those youth and finding them. And we know that there are trap houses. We know there are kids staying in trap houses. We know that there are people that take under 18 kids in, which, by the way, is illegal, and harbor them from their parents. And I guess what I would say to that is that we've got a lot of services here and trained professionals and opportunities for kids that living in a private person's home as a minor would not offer.
No, I actually get asked that quite a bit when we do outreach events and I set up a table in the booth and all that. Quite often I get asked, hey, can I take these kids in? And we strongly discourage it. It is, refer them to the OCS system or try to get them reunited with their parents or work with the schools. But just taking a kid in because they don't want to be at home, that's a bad recipe.
Yeah, Jay actually made some rack cards that talk about, here's the questions that you have to ask yourself, because there is liability involved if you don't have a parent-to-parent agreement. Even if you do have a parent-to-parent agreement, there are things that you legally can't do, and if you facilitate or cause harm to come to that child through drugs or alcohol or other means, you can be held liable for that. Right. It's a very big deal. And in Alaska, I think we have a lot of support for parental rights. As an organization, we've had mediation. We have 2 master's level therapists in the community who offer mediation that we paid for their training to go to Atlanta, Georgia, with the agreement that they would come back and do that for free for our clients for 2 years. What's interesting about that is that we offered mediation to 22 families during that time frame, and at that time we didn't have housing, so we were really using that as a tool to try to get kids to go home, right, and not just be trying to camp or couch surfing. And out of those 22 families that we offered mediation to, 21 parents said no. And it got so heartbreaking that towards the end, in the beginning, we would have the kids there and we would have the parents on conference call, and we would ask if they would be willing to do some mediation counseling with their kids. And after about a dozen of those where the parents said no, we said, we can't do that anymore. We have to have that conversation with the parents without the kid there, because it's devastating. Right. It's basically the parents saying, I'm done with the kid. And we do have parents that bring their children here and say, I'm done with them. Right. And deliver them to us with all of their worldly things, and they basically abandon them on our doorstep. Yep, happens quite often. And so I think sometimes when we think about homeless youth, there are some misnomers there. We think about kids that don't want to follow the rules, that are difficult, that are oppositional. We see very few of those kids. We see way more of the kids who are abandoned and right. Or don't. It's not good for them to be at home. It's not safe. Home life is in such disarray that it's not healthy for them to be there. Right. That's where a lot of times we get referrals from the schools, because the schools know that home life is bad, and so it's really helpful to have the schools intermediating, between us and the students and the clients. So that's a good partnership. And it gives the school another backup, right, for that. And I get asked regularly if we have housing for under 18 youth. When we have our big building built, we will have crisis housing for under 18 and some residential housing. Right now, we have been able to put 17-year-olds in our housing in partnership with OCS. And so for people who are afraid that if they come here or if they bring a young person here who's under 18, that they're going to go right into the OCS system, that really generally doesn't happen, because they don't have anywhere to put them. Right. And most people that are doing foster care don't want a 17-year-old who's been homeless. And so we have been able to put them into our housing. We've had mixed success with that. We've had some very successful clients that were dialed in kind of when they came and knew where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do, and we just plugged them into resources and off they went. And we had some that kind of continually crashed and burned. But I would also say that some of those that continually crash and burn have families that don't want them at home, but also don't want to let go of them. So we end up in this weird, we don't want them at home, but we don't want you helping them too much either. And so the families can be sabotaging. And so it can get weird, but the overall, I think, outcome of the outreach piece of that is that the kids know there's somewhere safe.
Right.
They have a safe place to go.
Yeah, and that's the first thing. We just had a young lady come in yesterday and very distraught, very upset, sat down with two of our case managers. And I was just observing, and both case managers, as she's weeping and crying about her situation, both said, "You're in a safe place, and we're going to take care of you." And you could just see this sort of countenance come over her like, are you being genuine? You're being sincere? And then she stopped crying, and they came up with some plans.
Nice.
And so it was nice to see that.
Yeah, that's just what we hope for.
And it was cool last week, too, because Patty's at training right now, so I was Patty last week, and we had a ton of intakes last week. But what was really cool was all the people that I talked to on the phone or that came in, and they hadn't even been directly touched by that street outreach grant, but they were getting it through word of mouth and through the flyers that Jay has hung up and through the events that Jay has been out to. And so that's a big advantage of that grant as well, is that a lot of that funding pays for Jay to go to those events or for materials that can be distributed and just blast it. In one of the hockey rinks here, we have a big My House sign with the phone number now. So every time I'm reffing over at the Brett, I get to see the My House sign that Jay and I worked on that's hanging out. Shout out to Be Original Signs for doing that. They do a lot of great work for all that stuff. So it's that's really cool too, is to see this next phase of we're an established organization. And so now there's kind of the underground railroad of current clients and former clients that are directing people that they know in their community to get here.
Yeah, I'm just having the vehicle, having the signs on all of our vehicles and things like that. I did an event Saturday at the Wasilla Block Party, and I parked at the edge of the road, and I can't tell you how many people said, "I saw your car Saturday. Saw your car out there."
Yeah. I love that it's so recognizable, except when they call about my driving.
Right.
It's not so fun.
Yeah, we've got a few phone calls over the years because our phone number is plastered on there.
On the side of the vehicle. Jay, we've never had a call about Jay's driving. I must say that. Jay's excellent driver. What are some of the challenges of outreach, Jay?
Obviously, weather is always,
oh my gosh, right?
Winter
This
months and things like that. Yeah, and in the summer, I fight the bugs a lot when I'm traipsing through the woods and things like that, looking for people that are out there. Really, I think just being steady. I think that's the key. It's not really a challenge. It's the key. It's being intentional. When we do outreach, where we do outreach, who we're partnering with, all those things. But just the challenges of Alaska sometimes, the size, when you're trying to cover basically a medium-sized state, it can have its own challenges.
Yeah.
But again, we're seeing different challenges than what we had. When we first started, it was just like overwhelming. We had so many kids on the streets and kids everywhere and camping and all this stuff. And now it's the challenge is kind of to find them, because they're couch surfing more and they're less visible. So even though that's a good thing that I don't think we have near as many on the streets, there's still as many kids that are in crisis. Right. And we still have to find them and still have to make inroads and connections with our partners and partner agencies and things like that.
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought that up. Two things. One, I had a really nice note from Charity Lovelace, who sat back to back with me doing case management for about 2.5 years when we were all volunteers in the building. And Charity sent me a note one day that said, I saw the My House outreach van parked and the outreach coordinator coming out of the woods. And she said, I got choked up. She said, it was like a flashback. And she said, I knew what that was about. I knew what he was doing and where he was going. And I felt this immense sense of pride about our community and what we do and how we do it. And so I just thought that was kind of a nice, speaking of recognizing the vehicle and the people.
Right.
That was a nice little vote of confidence. But I also think that COVID changed the street outreach for us, because we had such a we had 2 years of basically everybody having to stay indoors. And I think that really did, Jay, change it, that we see kids more couch surfing and staying in trap houses and staying places that during COVID were the places that they had to go because they couldn't just be out wandering about.
And we're definitely seeing more clients come in crisis now, not just not having a place to stay, but mental health crisis.
Yeah.
I think we're on the verge of kind of an explosion nationwide, but we're seeing it here too, that are direct results from COVID and from kind of being cooped up and not going to school and just not taking care of their mental health. And I think we're seeing a ton more of kids that are coming in the door in absolute crisis. Yeah. And not even their own doing,
Right.
It's just where they are.
Right. I think those vulnerabilities that COVID created are really now manifesting, especially in the kids that didn't get back to school.
Right.
The social piece, trying to get a job and go to work at entry-level jobs when they have anxieties and they've not done a lot of peopling. I think you're right. I think that's really challenging. And one of the nice things about starting a job here in the building is that you're safe here. You're
Right.
among people that are all trying to do the same thing at the boutique and the cafe and managing through the challenges of kind of coming out of a shell. And so
It's really cool too when you see a client come in and they're scared, they don't know what's going on. We sit down with them, we come up with a plan, we put them into housing, we get them a job here, and you can tell day one it's total deer in headlights and they're scared and they don't know what to expect. And a week or so in, everybody knows their name, they're asking them how they're doing. Jim's going, move along.
Yeah, right.
And they just smile and they laugh and it's like they belong. They know they belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of the most powerful things, and I'm surprised at how many people in the community mention that to me that are regulars in the cafe and the boutique, that when they first come in to order a coffee from a brand new person, they look down, they don't make eye contact, they ring them out, but they don't have all the skills, the customer service skills, and they come back 3 months later and it's like a different person is there.
Right.
And that's such a compliment to both the leadership in the cafe and the boutique and the climate that I think the community has created here.
Right.
We could build this all we want. If the community doesn't engage, it doesn't work. And so, thank you to the Mat-Su community, people from all across the valley coming and stopping in and getting to know the clients. And I really think that that's one of the major benefits. And your outreach in many ways connects people in those outlying areas with our center here, and they do stop in to see what we're doing.
And from our conversations to people in other parts of the country, that's a pretty foreign concept. Most of the time they have a locked front door.
Right.
And you got to get it, somebody's got to buzz you in to get in, or they just do sort of a drop-in center and it's only kids and they don't have anybody from the general public or whatever. So we are kind of an anomaly, I think, as far as the program, the way it's set up, just having the boutique, having the cafe where people come in, they can shop, they can get food. We have groups that meet here every week.
We do.
And so they just begin to learn these kids and they know their names. And I just think that's really a benefit to what we do.
Yeah, agreed. It's very, very nice. And thank you as we wrap up. Thank you to everyone in the community who supported us in the beginning. A lot of people said it wouldn't work. And
yet here we are.
And people from all over the country are really trying to do what we're doing and create a space for preventing long-term homelessness through healing and training and education and inclusion. And this is just such a fun place to be. Thank you, Jay, for your years of dedication and commitment and your heart. I don't know that I've ever known a man that had such a heart for homeless youth, that he would just go out wherever he needed to go, into the woods and into parks. And I have a vivid memory of a young man who came here, and he was from Palmer, and he had a little house card in his wallet. You remember that young man?
Yeah. Tyler was his name.
And he came in and said, there was a man in the park in Palmer, and he gave this to me 1.5 years ago, and I'm just now coming in.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have to kind of keep in mind about outreach, is that it doesn't always happen that day. It doesn't always happen that week. But if they know that we're here and they know that we care, they'll hold on to that little lifeline. That little card was a little lifeline for him.
Yeah.
And so thank you for doing that.
Well,
Thank you for being that guy. That's all the time we've got for today. The My House Podcast Network is recorded at the My House Studio in Wasilla, Alaska. Our producer and editor is Isaac Smolden. I'm Michelle Overstreet. Until next time.